Is Bruce Matari. I also happen to be your county commissioner. And first of all, just thank you so much for coming out tonight. Like I said earlier, the attendance is overwhelming, and it's so nice to see so many people come out to hear what's going to be discussed tonight in this town hall. Just for you, so you know, there are surveys on the back table back there. So if you have not completed a survey, we're going to ask that you complete one, if you would be so kind. And as well, there are some questions that you can submit tonight. They're going to be on 3x5 index cards only. We're not going to have microphones roaming around the audience so you can ask questions. So if you want to actually ask a question, please just complete one of the index cards out there in the back table, and we'll get that, and we will ask those questions tonight, and you can hear the answers. Excuse me? Where do we want to put those? Can we get a? Yeah, there's a basket in the back. So, do we have anyone who can go around the audience and just, if you have a question, raise it up, and we'll have somebody collect it. Yep. If you want to ask a question, raise your hand. We'll give you a 3x5 card. If you have asked your question, hold the card up and we'll grab it from you. You good? Yeah, okay. All right, so, well, I was going to introduce you first because that's, you know, you're the main event. So, what I'd like to do is introduce to you the next speaker. He's a person that I've known for many years, and I have family that's in law enforcement, and so I've had a lot of exposure to the law enforcement community, mostly back east. But when I first met this individual, I realized that he was very different, very different person, listened, genuinely cared about the community, and at that time he was running for sheriff. And so at that, I learned very quickly that he really had the talent to do the job because of his experience. He'd been involved with managing jails before. He'd been involved with managing patrol. But the one thing that he was most involved in was working with the community and really listening to people. And so I'd like you all to give a really warm welcome to our sheriff, Robert Norris.
Thank you for coming out. I think we have a great exchange of information that is planned for you tonight. I believe I hit many loops of communication here in Kootenai County, and what we're going to be talking about are probably the 3 to 4 main concerns that always surface every single time. You're going to learn a little bit about me, how I voted as one of 44 sheriffs here in the state of Idaho to keep our quality of life high. And I'm going to hear from you on what we should do to prepare for this next legislative session, because I represent you. I work for you. I don't work for a city council. I don't work for a mayor. I work for we the people. So yeah, we're going to do that. So what I'd like to do at this time, we have these surveys. If you haven't passed out a survey, or I'm sorry, if you haven't completed a survey, it's important that you do, because I value them very much. I'd like for you to do that. So we're going to break. If you see any sheriff's office member here, they don't bite, I promise. You can go ahead and ask them where they work, what their area of expertise is, if they're working the jail, or if they're working patrol, or they're working at dispatch. Feel free. So we're going to take about 10 minutes to do that and fill out those 3x5 cards, and we'll start collecting them. So let's do that. And we're going to go, we have some surveys over here. If you don't want to get up, we can pass you out surveys. All right, we're going to take 10 minutes.
Okay, folks, anyone have anything they want to turn in? Go ahead, just raise your hand. We're going to go ahead and move on to the next section here. If you do have a question you want to turn in, just raise the index card up and someone will get it. But we're going to start. The next section here is to discuss about an active shooter and what the response will be. So here's Sheriff Robert Norris.
Thank you, Bruce. So, like to refresh your memory to an event that occurred in Uvalde, Texas, and where we saw some pretty horrifying images and video. And it's pretty shameful with some of the actions that occurred there. And I have to tell you that the Kootenai County Sheriff's Office policy does not look anything like that whatsoever, period. We do extensive training on it, and our training is actually really, really good. We take it from when that deputy sheriff gets that first call, and all of a sudden, boom, things are going sideways. Our policy is we develop a contact team, and whether that contact team is himself, herself, one other person, and we go directly to the threat and we eliminate the threat, period. There's no waiting. You don't have to wait for a supervisor. You don't have to wait for a lieutenant. You don't have to wait for a captain. The incident commander is that first deputy on scene, and he or she can make that determination. Those were pretty horrific, those images. But I promise you, I guarantee you, if in the event, the unfortunate event, we were to ever have anything similar nature, we're not going to have anything like that happen in Uvalde here in Kootenai County. So. And I would probably have to imagine there's a lot of uncertainty on many of our minds right now, which kind of segues into our next segment of what we're going to talk about. I used to work counterterrorism, and we used to work a lot closer with some of our federal agencies than we have recently. And the not so good people are starting to come across, and we have identified some individuals when I was working years ago that their intent is nefarious to the United States of America. So, do I believe that based on what's going on in the world, and do I believe some of the stress and uncertainty that we have in our nation, that I want everybody to be certainly aware and have it on their mind? If you see something, say something. If you see somebody, excuse me, if you see somebody walking into a mall, or if you see somebody carrying a rifle, carrying something in a fashion, it's okay to call 911. I know that the next 90 days, with the holiday seasons and what have you coming up, I think we're at a little higher risk of something happening in this nation. So I think that it's important that we all have a higher level of awareness, because many of the counterterrorism investigations that I was involved in actually just started with somebody making a phone call. And that phone call was, it seems really strange, but this one-bedroom apartment, and these people keep getting these deliveries of big boxes, and they keep making these deliveries into into this one-bedroom apartment. We conducted an investigation on that, And that was a very, very successful operation here in the United States. But it's sometimes the smallest thing. If it seems out of normal, unusual to you, don't hesitate to give us a call. So, one of the bigger subjects that I receive out in this community is questions about illegal immigration. And are we being impacted by illegal immigration? And so I have done an assessment. I have contacted our federal partners here. And here's how I came to this conclusion. 3 years ago, we would have a deputy that would need a translator in our jail maybe once every 4 months with an inmate who only spoke Spanish. And that has come down to about once a week now. We have had patrol deputies out in the field that would request a Spanish speaker. It maybe was every 3 months. We're down to about once a week now. And the reason why I'm giving these other pieces of it, if I gave you a report of how many foreign nationals we have in our jail, and I said that we have 5, and 3 years ago we had 0, it was what we call skewed statistics. Because, okay, you went from 0 to 3. That doesn't really seem like too much. But when I take these other pieces, and when I take what our jail deputies have said, and what our people out on patrol have said, and what I see out in the community, and what I get reports from our border patrol, I have to say, based on all of those things, yes, I do believe we are being impacted by illegal immigration, and mostly from the southern border. I do have to say that. I have done an assessment on these white buses. It's a pretty popular conversation. Hey, we have reports of these white buses that are transporting illegal aliens here. And the assessment on that is, if there are white buses transporting illegal aliens here, it's not, in my opinion, and from the information I've collected, it's not a federal or state entity doing it. It's likely an NGO, what we call a non-government organization. But we have stopped some of these buses. We've asked some of these buses, but we can't substantiate that these white buses are transporting illegal aliens. I know it's a big deal on social media, but we just don't see it. What I'd like to do is I'd kind of like, Chief, would you mind coming up? I'd like to introduce you to Chief Easterling from Border Patrol and David Orozco from Border Patrol. And kind of like to just have an open conversation with you. I have a couple questions, if that's okay. So you've kind of heard my assessment that I believe, based on our foreign nationals in the Kootenai County Jail, based on the need for more Spanish speakers, based on our deputies out in the field coming in contact with more individuals that are foreign nationals, I believe that we are seeing an impact of the open border. Would that be something that you would agree on, or?
So pardon. First of all, good evening. Thank you for having me. Thank you. There's a really long way to answer that.
And a really short way.
Right.
And you and I are both plain speakers. So we just say yes and no. And
so the fact of the matter is that the the amount of traffic that we've seen across the southern border over the past several years, certainly. Even I could go all the way back to 2014 and give you every year, and that was a very significant year. But the fact is that we have seen unprecedented amounts of traffic over the last 3 to 4 years, period. The watermark year for us before last year was 1.6 million people. That was back in the year 2000. Last year it was 2.6 million people that we caught, that we know of. There's a lot to be said about gotaways. We think we have a count on those, but who knows? We can count footprints and think, we didn't catch them, and there's an estimate there, but fact is we don't know what's there. So there's a lot going on the southern border. There's a lot going across the southern border. I guess the plainest way I can put it is that what you see on TV is in fact happening. And we've got roughly 19,000 Border Patrol agents nationwide who are working as hard as they can to bring all that in. But when we're tied up on one particular part of our mission, and it's a very important one, the humanitarian piece, we are not out there patrolling other areas to figure out what's getting by us. And those are the things that keep us up at night.
So you segued into one of my questions for you, Chief. I have not been to the southern border, but are the images that we see on social media and in major network television, are those accurate? Is that really, are there really lines and lines and lines of foreign nationals coming here?
There are. Any given day, we see reports of groups of 90, 140. There was one the other day that was several hundred. Now, how that happens is not that they all come across at one time. And before I go any further, the vast majority of these groups are made up of families. A lot of it is young women and their children. The vast majority of those big groups, though, come in over a period of hours, and by the time the Border Patrol agents can get to where the back of that group is, they just keep counting them. So that's why it makes the group sound so big. It may have only been, I say only, some people will not like this, but it may have only been 20 people when it started. But by the time they get to the back, it's 200 that are sitting there, and we'll make sure that everybody's okay, no medical emergencies, no distress, and then we'll start processing and turning them onto NGOs in most cases.
Can you tell us about the civil enforcement immigration policy, and how does Border Patrol make the evaluation of deporting and not deporting a criminal alien?
Certainly. So there are a lot of things that, first of all, if you're interested in reading the memo on civil immigration enforcement priorities, it was signed by Secretary Mayorkas, you can simply type in on Google Mayorkas memo, and it'll be the first thing that comes up. It's a little lengthy, but it will really outline everything in great detail, far greater than I'm about to. The long and short of it is, though, I'll use it for instance. If one of your deputies calls one of our agents will make every effort to respond. Period. We have. I should stop. We have stations.
Please keep going. When you're supposed to stop, then that's when I want you to keep going.
So we have about 225 Border Patrol agents patrolling 308 miles between the Cascades and Glacier National Park. That's what I've got. So as you can tell, I'm a little light on personnel resources. But when we get calls from very specifically Idaho or even Montana law enforcement partners, we will respond, provided we're not hours away, because that doesn't work for either one of us to extend that stop. But when we respond and we find somebody, we will assess right then what we have, in the vehicle. Is it a juvenile? Is it a a man or a woman, where are they from? We'll start getting all of their biological information. We'll figure out what their criminal history looks like. If they have little to none, then we'll work with that, what we do. But the easy answer to that is going to be that we'll process them and probably let them walk right back down the street. It's a little more complicated than that, but ultimately they'll end up getting back out on the street. If it's somebody with an egregious criminal history, then we're going to work through kind of a rubric of what all that is to figure out whether they're going to be turned over to our partners at ICE, what we call HSI, Homeland Security Investigations, may take it and look at it depending on what it is, but otherwise we'll turn it over to enforcement and removal operations. They will then take that person, at least right now, to Tacoma, and then they'll figure out how to have them removed from the country. If they've already got a removal against them, then that's a little bit easier, and that's a felony. So that is almost a guaranteed ticket out. If they don't have a removal against them and they simply have misdemeanors, depends on what those are, on whether we'll be able to actually do something with them given DHS's enforcement priorities. So I would encourage you to read the memo. It also outlines where we can do enforcement, which is nowhere near schools, nowhere near churches, things like that. And a lot of that's very understandable, but that's kind of where we are.
Anybody see the press release on 16 pounds on what we call a straight traffic stop? 16 pounds of methamphetamine that a Kootenai County deputy sheriff was able to take off the street. And then there was a Shoshone deputy that got 10,000 fentanyl pills. 10,000. Much easier to transport, easier to manufacture down in South and Central America. We're seeing that drug is getting cheaper and cheaper because it's easier to transport, easier to manufacture. Which segues into a question I have for you. I had a federal agency that said, hey, fentanyl's out of control here. And I said, yes. I go, most of it comes from Tri-Cities, Spokane, and the southern border. So shut the southern border and we'll have a conversation on it. He goes, we'd like for you to provide some deputies for a task force. It wasn't a task force with Border Patrol. It was a task force with the FBI. And I said, no, I'm not going to do that. I said, I have my own deputies that work our drug enforcement program. But until you shut the southern border, I am not going to give any assets to the FBI. Our fentanyl deaths are up threefold from what they were just in 2020. And what do we have to do to get the attention of your bosses that, hey, we have a problem here in North Idaho about this fentanyl that is being sourced from the southern border here in North Idaho?
So as we talked about in the room, sometimes I say things and get myself in trouble, which is, it is what it is.
That's what we like about you.
Right? So
That's what we like about you.
At least this time, we are members of some of these task forces only because it works for us, because we can find out, a lot of other things that are going on. You hit the nail on the head. Southern border is a huge issue when it comes to fentanyl and really all kinds of hard narcotics. The Tri-Cities is troublesome. And why the Tri-Cities is troublesome is really because it's an easy connection from the southern border to, kind of like, it connects to a whole nother series of arteries or arterioles or whatever you want to say, and allows people to move those hard narcotics across, the north and the Midwest easier. You think about the southern border, the law enforcement presence on the southern border is really, really heavy. I mean, it is really heavy. And I know everybody sees on TV Arizona DPS getting this and Texas DPS getting that. There's Border Patrol, most of the Border Patrol agents that we have are down along the southern border. The counties, the locals, there's just a really heavy presence of law enforcement, and there's not so much along the north and the Midwest. Not to say that we're not all up here working as hard as we possibly can, but there are just fewer of us. There's just less population. There are all kinds of things, and you can move things across here, seasonally, of course. But the fact is that our commissioner, Commissioner Miller, is laser focused on fentanyl. In fact, we're on, our third operation, major operation, specifically focusing our entire agency on fentanyl. And I mean the entire agency, Border Patrol, Air and Marine, the ports of entry with the Office of Field Operations, working together with other federal, state, and local partners. So it's something that's near and dear to him, and it's something that we too, in the Spokane sector, are really, really keyed in on. And I think I brought it up to you, Sheriff, and I'll say it again now that it galls me. I know a lot of people, I don't know if anybody in here thought it, maybe you did. I'll call you out on it. Probably wondering what border we're patrolling. I heard one chuckle. But yes, the border's 100 miles up, and no, we don't have hordes of Canadians coming over at us. But we do have our share of people that are coming across that border. Of course, with the marijuana laws and such, specifically in Washington, we don't have quite that threat any longer, at least there. But we do have things going on there. All that being said, this corridor is being used, to my point a minute ago about the Tri-Cities and all that. This corridor is being used straight away, and it just galls me that we have criminals operating on our highways with impunity. Then, even with my short resources, I'm going to do everything I can, and the sheriff is too, I'm certain, to not have that happen. And that's why we respond every single time we can and figure out what, they and thus we have on our hands. But we're going to do all kinds of things on these roads and working together where we can to stop this mess.
So I want to give you an opinion that recently came down from the Idaho Supreme Court. And not very, very happy with it. And we need to do some changes in our Supreme Court here in Idaho. If one of our drug sniffing dogs is on a traffic stop, and if his or her tail touches the vehicle, they are interpreting that as a search not articulated by probable cause. If their tail touches the vehicle, they are considering that an illegal search. So it's really important for us to be engaged in our in our community, whether it's a city election, whether it's a school district, whatever it is. It's important for us to be engaged in who we're voting for, what the issues are. But a lot of people believe that we have a conservative Supreme Court because we generally are, every elected official here in Idaho, in North Idaho anyway, is a conservative. But boy, sometimes sometimes the Supreme Court, they certainly differ otherwise. So, okay, you'll be able to stick around for the public Q&A. Perfect. All right. Do we have the results of the survey yet, Lisa? If not, these folks get to see how I dance, and that is going to be a treat. So what we're going to do now is we're going to go over the results of these surveys. And I'm going to give you a prediction of what we're likely to see in the upcoming legislative session. Some of these bills that that have come up in the last couple of years are likely to come up again. And the purpose of this is I want to get your feedback on how I should vote as your sheriff to either oppose or support some of these bills. I don't know what the results are, so I'm going to go over a couple bills while we're waiting for those. We had a bill that went into the Idaho legislature that wanted to raise the petty theft limit to $1,800. And like I said, I don't know how you voted, but I'm going to tell you how I voted. I voted no on that because here's what happens. First, they say, "Oh, you know what? We're gonna raise it to $1,800 because some of these individuals, stole food, and that's all it was. It had nothing to do with that Jack Daniels. It was just food and all that. And then once they raise it to $1,800, then they say, we want to decriminalize it. So let's just make it a civil action because we're seeing that's working out so well in other states. We have some states that we're seeing that people are taking their shopping cart and they have their calculator out on their phone, and if it's less than $1,950, it's considered a civil action and they just walk right out. So not knowing what the results are, I voted against raising the petty theft limit. A show of hands, who believes that that was what you would have done, or do you support me in opposing that? All right. Okay. So far, we're doing okay. So far, we're doing okay. How about, let's talk about what a mandatory minimum sentence is. A mandatory minimum sentence is when a defendant goes to court, and if he or she has a criminal history of 4 previous violent felons, then you have a minimum of this, a medium of this, and a maximum of this. I don't know if you have noticed this, but I have noticed this, and I have talked to prosecutors here in Kootenai County. And I scratch my head at some of the sentences that some of the judges here in Kootenai County hand out. Case in point, has anybody been monitoring Stan Mortensen, our new prosecutor? Been there for about a year or so. But he puts out a notice of sentencing on certain defendants. Did anybody notice the one recently where a defendant had his 9th DUI, and this was his 4th felony DUI, and he got probation? Stan Mortensen, he's our Kootenai County prosecutor.
Is that an elected office?
That's an elected office, yep. So Stan's office on that recommended 5 years. And the judge in that particular case gave that particular defendant probation. Now, another thing is, and I've been a little bit confused on some of our sentencing on defendants who were convicted of sexual acts with a child. And I would look at some of these and I would say, well, this person with the same strength of case, same weaknesses, this person got 10 years. And then I would look at another similar case, and this person got probation. So, I'm confused, at some of our sentencing guidelines. And in Idaho, there are only two crimes that you have a mandatory sentence on. Only two. That is trafficking large amounts of controlled substance, cocaine, methamphetamine. It's a minimum 10-year. And one is murder. Murder in the first degree. Everything else is discretionary. So I believe that, I'm going to ask the question. So based on the interpretation of a mandatory minimum, whereas if you have a repeat offender, let's say 4 felony DUIs, 9 total convictions for DUI, do we believe that there should be some sort of a guideline of some sort of a mandatory minimum sentence? Those who favor, raise your hand. All right. We're still batting 1,000. We're still batting 1,000. Now, probably something that's going to be a little controversial. I know. But that's what leaders have to do. Sometimes leaders can stay away from subjects that aren't controversial and fly under the radar, and everything's good. And they're good with this group, and they're good with that group. But unfortunately, when you're a leader and you're a department head, you don't always have that luxury. So, there was a bill that I spoke in favor of. And here is what the bill said. That if a library book, a book that's in the library, had sexually explicit content in violation of Idaho law, that it should be in an area for people 18 and over. Now, it didn't say that you couldn't buy the book. It didn't give restrictions on library boards or school districts that they couldn't buy the book. It didn't say they had a certain list of books that you could purchase from. Didn't say anything like that. All it said was, if it had sexually explicit material in violation of an Idaho statute. And I believe that that's a reasonable solution to this problem. And you know what? Let's go a little bit deeper, because I think it's important for you to know how I come up with some of my conclusions, or how I come up with some of my decision making which eventually becomes public policy. Do we remember last year in 2022 we had a pretty volatile Pride event in downtown Coeur d'Alene, and it was pretty volatile. You had people that had different opinions on both sides of the subject, and there was a lot of people. There was a lot of people carrying guns. There was a lot of people that went there with the intent to create a disturbance, and it was very volatile. One misguided accident could have turned that to a very, very ugly event in our park. So I brought in the board of directors of North Idaho Pride, and I said that, thank you for taking this meeting. I appreciate that you did. I said, I believe that I have the pulse of this community pretty good. And I believe that in general, Kootenai County residents pretty freedom people, and whoever you want to date and whoever you want to marry, I really don't think the average Kootenai County resident really cares. But when you advertise a drag show for kids, I think you're going to incite a lot of emotion. I think that's where the threshold of volatility came from. So they thanked me. They said, "Thank you very much. We appreciate it." This past year, they didn't have a drag show for kids. And we had an event that was absolutely a lot less volatile. I don't even think I saw any guns out there in the park, but there may have been. But I believe that the temperature was way down. And I have to tell you that is part of my job. The number one responsibility in the Idaho Constitution is to maintain the peace. That's the number one thing. And that was how I brought what I believe is a problem-solving solution to an event that could have had pretty catastrophic consequences. So, yeah. So now I spoke in favor of the bill that all it said was that it had sexually explicit material, should be in an area of 18 and over. Is that something that you would have agreed on, that you believe if a book has sexually explicit material, it should be in an area over 18 and over? Or let's just raise your hand for that.
Absolutely.
All right. Still, we're batting 1,000. You have some questions? All right. Yep. Is there any from the chief, for the chief?
These questions are for you right now.
For me?
Yeah, for you.
All right.
All right, first one here. Is the Kootenai County Sheriff considered a constitutional sheriff who will follow the Constitution and not cave to the government? Now, let's just be clear, all right? As a county commissioner, I'd like you to cave a little bit, maybe on the budget, but for the other governments and stuff, just a little on the budget, just a little.
No, we'll see.
all right.
Well, protecting this community is my
That I
number
agree
one.
with. That I agree with. So. All right, we have 3 quick questions here, and then we'll go to the survey results, and then we can go back
Okay.
to some questions.
All right.
All right, the next one is, and this is from the audience. Will the sheriff stop federal government?
Well, was the first question a real question, or was that
No,
just?
that's a real question.
Oh, do you want me to answer it?
Oh, yeah, yeah.
Oh, okay.
I was just kind of kidding about the county side, but
Tested, trusted, and proven. So, when I took office, we had a health district that was telling people that you had to do certain things and what have you. And when I process those mandates, I believe there was an argument for due process, especially as it pertains to our Fourth Amendment right. So I did come out and I said I'm not going to enforce any of those mandates on healthy people who are just not wearing a mask. I did do that. I also have come out and I have also said that I am not going to enforce any Second Amendment restrictions whatsoever. I'm not going to criminalize. Go ahead. I'm not going to criminalize the law-abiding citizen for owning a firearm. The Second Amendment says shall not be infringed. I remember being at the fair, and I remember this individual coming to me and says, I just don't feel safe here in Kootenai County. There's There's just too many guns around here. And I said, she goes, we've got to do something about gun control. And I said, have you thought about Chicago? This is a true story. This is a true story. I said, have you thought about Chicago? And she says, well, I told you, she said, well, no. And I said, well, they have some of the most restrictive gun laws in the United States. She goes, yeah, but it's a horrible place to live. I said, ma'am, I just don't know if we're going to come to a happy medium here. Now, am I in favor of if somebody's a convicted felon and they use a gun in the commission of a crime and we want to enhance their sentence? I'm right there. Yeah. I am right there, 100%. But criminalizing the law-abiding citizen is not something that I'm going to have a conversation on. So,
All right. Next question. Why does the prosecuting attorney not want to prosecute beggars? Both the sheriff and Coeur d'Alene police, I presume here, were called, said the same thing. This is not confidential. So, prosecuting beggars.
good thing about Idaho is there's not too many laws. The bad thing about Idaho is there's not too many laws. So the Ninth Circuit has said that it has to meet certain requirements. And I'm speaking for somebody else. I'm speaking for the city of Coeur d'Alene. The city of Coeur d'Alene does have an ordinance that prevents it. But they have to have amplified music in addition to. So we see the individuals at Costco, and there's a little of an amplifier. There's a speaker there. So that is what. Once they plug in the speaker, that's against the law. But if they don't plug in the speaker, you can solicit money or an alm in the state of Idaho. There's no law against it. We do have Jordan Redmond here. Jordan, raise your hand. He's one of our legislators. Do we have any other legislators here? Oh, Tony Wisniewski. I meet with them regularly, and there are things that are on my radar that we are going to have a conversation on, and certainly those types of things. But the easiest solution on that would be, if you live in an incorporated city, is for the city council to pass something pretty quickly. City of Coeur d'Alene does, but it has to have an amplified speaking device.
Okay, now we do have these survey results.
All right.
Okay.
Okay.
First question. What is your opinion of your sheriff's office? And the survey said, very satisfied or satisfied, 96.
96% or 96 individuals?
96 is
I'm good with 96%.
yeah, well, 96 is the count here. Neutral, 8, and dissatisfied. I guess you can't please them all. You got one. You got one out there
It happens. Well, it does happen. Yes.
to work on that. So
Yes, sir. You're not going to withhold funds on my budget for that, are you?
no,
right.
no, that one wasn't me.
Okay.
Do you believe illegal immigrants should be given Idaho driver's licenses?
So, you know what? I missed that one. That was on my notes here. That will come up again, 100%. Absolutely it will. I voted no. And on that particular, I have to tell you, the lobbyists and special interest groups are alive and well in Boise. That room is packed of lobbyists, packed of individuals, and a Republican senator named Jim Guthrie, has presented a bill the last 2 years to provide driver's licenses to illegal aliens. And I have to tell you, it did fail. But I promise you, as sure as we're in this room, it's going to come up again. And I did vote no last time. How was I on that one? I did vote no. Was it a close?
We had 124 survey results or responses, and not one said yes. Not one.
Jordan, Tony?
Keep it down. Keep it.
Jordan, Tony, you got that? Not one. All right.
Okay, next question. How much of a concern is illegal immigration to you? 1 is none, 5 is substantial. Well, let's see. 1 is 1, so that's none. For number 2, there were 0 responses. For 3, there was only 1 response. For 4, there was 8 responses. But 5, which is substantial, had all of the rest. So there you go.
All right. Chief David, thank you for being here. We appreciate that.
Thank you.
And don't go anywhere.
Do you believe children 17 years and under should be allowed to consume alcohol in an alcohol establishment? 113 people responded. Not one said yes. So there you go.
Okay.
Do you believe children 17 years and under should be allowed to ingest controlled substances in establishments? Now, we got one more person respond to this question versus the alcohol. So 114.
New math.
New math, yeah. Not one person said yes to that.
All right, then I think the next one's the big question.
Yes. Do you support providing sexually explicit materials in violation of Idaho statute to minors? Now, we had 114 people respond to this,
You're keeping me at the edge of my seat.
but it was not unanimous,
All right.
okay? We had 112 say no and 2 said yes. So, you know,
I still feel like I'm batting 1,000 here.
you definitely are on the side where most of the people are responding here, so.
Okay.
Do you support mandatory minimums for repeat offenders? 112 people responded. 102 said yes, 10 said no. So mandatory minimums. Next question. Do you believe raising the monetary limit for petty theft from $1,000 to $1,800 will help decrease or increase thefts? Now here, it was largely divided, much more so than the previous questions. Out of 103 responses, 41 said decrease and 62 said increase.
Okay.
What are your thoughts?
A skewed question? A skewed question? All right. All right.
Well,
All right.
that's fair, because it could be a little bit confusing. So why don't you tell the folks your thoughts on that question and what you've seen?
Yeah, we went through it pretty good, and a vast majority of them do support mandatory minimums.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
Can I tell you why this mandatory minimums is coming up? There's another special interest group that's down in Boise, and they have an individual who's a family member of a large grocery chain that has gone awry. So he is looking at a minimum sentence because he falls under the trafficking where I said there is a mandatory minimum. So I'm not going to name the grocery store, but the initials are Albertsons. just to let you know, they are paying lobbyists from out of state to come and remove the mandatory minimum for the drug trafficking. And that is another room that is full of lobbyists. Yeah.
So here's the last question. What are your concerns or priorities? Now, this is from you, the audience. And those topics were crime, traffic, social issues, illegal immigration, and gun rights. It's interesting what the number one issue is here.
You have me at the edge of my seat once again.
Okay.
All right.
You ready?
I'm ready.
All right. Illegal immigration.
Oh.
You know, as far away as we are from the border down south, it's the number one issue. And, you know, we talk about this. What is the definition of a community? It's the people that are in it, right? The people are what define this community, not the lakes, not the mountains, it's the people. And so when you have so many people coming into a community too quickly, it changes the community. And that's what we're seeing now in our country. And so I can see why people have such a concern about that.
It's interesting because the last town hall, I think guns, securing our Second Amendment right, I think was the first one. Where's that one fall?
It's number two.
Okay. All right.
It's number two. So, and I think it's fair to say that you see certainly some of the folks in that little state known as Washington, D.C. They think it's a state. They treat it like a state. But they keep talking about trying to figure out ways to get guns out of people's hands.
They always seem to do the law-abiding ones. and
Yes.
They don't want to have a conversation on the criminal element that
Yes.
has guns.
So number three is crime.
Okay.
And what would you say is the number one driver for crime in the community?
Well, I've only done this for 33 years. But I have to tell you,
Tell us anyhow.
I have to tell you, the number one driver of crime is substance abuse. Substance abuse, 100%. Yeah, of the 515 inmates that we currently have, when I should be at 361, generally the nexus to why they steal, why they rob, why they assault, generally it's a substance abuse or some or other affliction. But that's generally, if we could solve that, we could solve a lot of our problems. But that's been my experience, substance abuse.
Number four was traffic. And I think we all know that growth is one of the larger drivers for traffic. Would you say growth plays a role in the crime as well, overall?
Only 100%.
Only?
Only 100%. Yeah, no, absolutely. We're just growing too fast, folks. I have to tell you, we're just growing too fast. Every infrastructure sector that we have is stressed, whether it's schools, whether it's hospitals and medical facilities. Every single one of them is stressed because we're growing too fast. Traffic, that's 100%.
Do you mind if I just make a quick comment about the budget and the justice services and what that draws?
As long as you say and remind people that justice services, especially with the sheriff's office, is a 24-hour operation. So our budgets are always going to be larger than public works, and our budget's always going to be larger than any other departments. As long as you say that, then I'm okay with it. Go
So
ahead.
crime doesn't take a break on the weekends, doesn't take a break at night.
No. Look at Brett, my undersheriff, Brett Nelson. Come on out. He hasn't had a day off in 2 months, right? Yeah, so crime does not take a day off,
No, it doesn't.
nor does it know normal hours.
And that is true. You run basically a small city at the jail. And so, folks, out of a $110 million county budget, and I'm not including solid waste, that's its own separate entity, but out of $110 million, 2/3 of that budget goes towards criminal justice services. That includes juvenile detention, the sheriff's office, prosecutor's office, public defender, everything. It's very expensive to run that. So property, that comes out to about 72 million. Property taxes covers about 53, 54 million. So it doesn't even cover the justice services.
You know, I'm, as you may or may not know, I've had conversations with incorporated cities here in Kootenai County. And I have told some of them that your model for law enforcement cannot be sustained. It simply cannot be sustained. And when I explained to them that, well, law enforcement is a 168-hour work week, and they look at me like, well, why is that? The reception at City Hall is a 40-hour work week. Why? And then I have to explain it's a 24/7 operation. It's a 168-hour work week. Plus you have fringe benefit time in there, and the fringe benefit time has to be covered by another deputy sheriff. I can't just leave the patrol car vacant because there's no what we call backfill. And then the jail is the same way. I can't not feed inmates because I've got a fringe benefit factor of vacations and holiday time, what have you. I have to be able to provide backfill for those. And law enforcement is a 24/7 operation. It's very expensive. And once I say that it's a 24/7 operation, and we generally are almost 3.5 times bigger than whatever other department a municipality has, it kind of puts it in perspective a little bit. But it's an education that I have to do every time a council changes. Yeah.
Yeah. And then the fifth issue, the lowest one on the totem pole, if you will, is social issues. So I'll run through that again. Illegal immigration is number 1, gun rights is number 2, crime is number 3, traffic is number 4, and last is social issues.
All right.
So,
And I'd just like to reiterate that I do value those surveys, and I will share those with our legislators, meeting with them Monday. So I will absolutely do that.
okay, so we have some more questions. That one I want to ask you. Yeah.
You want to ask me that one first?
I want to. Well, I've asked you a few. I want to ask you this one. And this is from the audience.
Well, sure.
Okay.
Because it came from the audience, I'll answer.
Okay. And just reiterate, the opinion of the sheriff's office. Only one was dissatisfied with you. Mm-hmm. Eight were neutral. So I guess they're still making up their mind.
Well, they weren't dissatisfied, so I count those as outstanding.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, I mean, that's the way I interpret it.
And then, of course, 96 are very, or just, satisfied with you out of the survey respondents. So this is from Richard in Coeur d'Alene. And he asked this question, are you running for sheriff again?
Yes,
All right.
yes, I am.
Well, it's nice to see you got all this support. So that satisfaction is showing here.
All right.
All right. Well, let's get into some more
Get
questions.
us some questions.
you know.
I'd like to get the chief up here so he can answer some questions too.
Well, I think, do you have any questions related to immigration at all?
Oh, there's some in there?
There, yes, we have one. We can
Yeah.
ask this one. How is illegal immigration affecting us in Idaho, and what can we do about it? And I know you kind of touched on that a little bit.
Yeah, so we did have a question at our last town hall, and the question was, well, can I go out, and not me, but I'm quoting, can I as a citizen go out and arrest somebody who I know or think is here illegally? No, you cannot do that. Do not do that. But do I believe it is having an impact? Yes, I do. And I believe 99% of our illegal drugs are being sourced from the southern border through Tri-Cities and Spokane, right here in Kootenai County.
Okay. What is the plan to control illegal immigrants coming to Kootenai County?
Well, As your sheriff, I care about everybody's rights. As your sheriff, I care about everybody's rights. And we do not racially profile against anybody here in Kootenai County. However, if you're a criminal, we like to make you feel as uncomfortable as possible. So if you're a criminal and you're doing something illegally, we want to make it very uncomfortable for you. And if we have to keep taking you to jail for possession of controlled substance, receiving stolen property, stolen vehicles, we're going to keep doing that.
Okay, good. Will the sheriff stop federal government entities, FBI, CIA, et cetera, from raiding innocent citizens' homes, like citizens who simply give public comment at library board meetings? Now, we did have that issue with some of those parents back east at those school boards where I think the Attorney General put out a letter or something and instructed.
Certainly, the sheriff's office is not going to participate in any of those type of activities. And to give you an example, because I believe that examples are stronger than when somebody can just say something. So we had a federal entity, was not our friends over there, not our friends, that went to a federal probationer's home who had requested to stay at his uncle's house because of for some reason. So when we did this, it was a federal probation and parole. They asked for us to assist them, and we did. And we go inside the location, and the federal individual says, "Well, we're gonna take those guns that are in that gun case in the living room." And the sergeant on scene knew what my directive was, what my direction is, and he says, "No, we're not going to take those." He goes, "Yes, we are." And one phone call to me, another phone call to special agent in charge, and says, "Hey, we're not taking those guns. Those are the homeowner's guns. Those are guns that he uses for hunting. The nephew is staying in a back bedroom off of the garage. There were no guns in that area, and we're not going to take his guns." So that gives you kind of a little insight that we already have a policy similar to we're not going to engage in those type of activities.
And is that a policy or a culture, would you say, a little bit? Because, you know, that's an important component too within an organization.
Oh, yeah. So culture always trumps policy. Period. You can make a policy the next day. You can make that policy, and generally an organization of our size may or may not adhere to that policy. But culture always trumps policy. So we've done a lot in my first term, but we still have some work to do, and we still want to shape certain culture to best represent the men and women of Kootenai County.
Very good. Okay, this next question here. I understand that the current mayor of Hayden wants to replace the sheriff, well, the sheriff's office, not the sheriff, with a police department. Your thoughts on those?
We love serving the city of Hayden. We will continue to serve the city of Hayden. The city of Hayden has a growth plan that cannot be sustained at their current levels. They only had 3.5 officers when I took office. They have a population of about 16,000 people. The nationally recognized standard of how many officers per 1,000 is what's generally used. So City of Coeur d'Alene, they're about 1.8. City of Post Falls, about 1.6. Rathdrum, 2.2. City of Hayden, when I took office, was 0.22. 0.22, not 2.2. And so all I said was that, hey, your model for law enforcement can't be sustained. You've got 17,000 people. You've got a big box store. You've got a small amusement park. You've got alcohol establishments going up left and right. And I can't compromise law enforcement everywhere else in the county because of your growth plan. And I believe that they are making great headway. I believe that the city council and the mayor did listen to me, and I think that we are moving in the right direction. But sometimes in government doesn't move as quickly as we'd like it to. But I'm very, very happy in the progression that we are going. The city of Hayden and any city here in Kootenai County is not going to be able to afford their own police department. You'd have to stand up your own dispatch center. That takes towers and millions of dollars. The study that the city of Hayden did in 2010 when they had 4,000 less residents, it was going to cost them in today's number like $6 million. And they said, no, forget it. You know what, let's just keep doing here the way
Is
we're
that
going.
a year?
Yes.
6 million a year?
Yes. So I believe that we will always serve the city of Hayden. It's we enjoy the city of Hayden, and I'm sure that some of that political wrangling was political noise. But in the long run, I believe we're the finest law enforcement agency in Kootenai County, and we will continue to serve Hayden.
Very good. Next question. Dispatch told me the panhandling law was changed. Who changed it, and what does that mean now?
Kind of goes back to that earlier question. The Ninth Circuit changed it. That's who did it. You know, unfortunately, here in Idaho, we're attached to the Ninth Circuit. So when I'm probably interpreting the question as that's probably the interpretation that.
Yeah. This question, I'd be interested in hearing your answer to this one. Not so sure it falls under the purview of the sheriff's office, but can local cities annex county land? What can Kootenai County residents do if they don't want to be incorporated into a city?
Well, I would have to defer that to the master of ceremonies. Then I'm going to give that one right back to you.
Well, actually, local cities can annex land if the landowner wants to be annexed into the city and the city wants to annex the land. And the county has zero say over that. So if you own land and you don't want to be annexed into the city, you won't be. Now, what can happen, and I'm pretty sure that the sheriff has seen this, is that land around you can eventually get annexed. And then your land is county land and you're surrounded by the city. And so every once in a while, and I think we have that here a little bit.
Oh, yeah,
There's
we
a
have
couple
pockets
little
of that. Oh, yeah,
patches
absolutely.
where there's jurisdictional questions every once in a while and who has to show up if there's a call for service and things like that. So you've seen that. We have that.
Oh, yeah, oh, yeah.
Yeah. So those are our questions that we had tonight.
All right,
So
that's it, huh?
that's it.
All right.
So
gonna-
next up, I think, is legislative priorities. And
Well, you know what? I'm going to ditto what we previously discussed. I do believe that all of those subjects that we discussed will be in the upcoming legislative session. And I will take your surveys, and that's how I am going to vote as your sheriff. So,
yeah, first of all, thank you. Thank you for putting this together. Thank you all for coming out tonight. I certainly hope that it was informative to some degree, that you walked out of here tonight with just a little bit of extra information of understanding how something works or what's more important or how your sheriff thinks. And y'all have a great evening, and thank you, Sheriff Norris.
Thank you very much. Thank you.